Hi guys, welcome back to Silly Tarot if you are returning. It is great to see you guys again. We're going to be doing another collective reading as we do here. And I pulled some cards ahead of time to see what message the collective needed to hear, see what was coming through. And I was pulling from my archetype stack, my Kim Krans archetype stack. And the cards that came out were very interesting. I will share those with you now. What we got was Kairos, the warrior, which came out in reverse. And then 3 cards fell out, one on top of the other. I actually thought, first I thought there was only one, then I thought there was 2, because that was what I was actually trying to pull, and then I realized there was 3 whole cards. So what we had here was the womb, the vow, and the fault line. And so I was sort of sitting with the message a little bit and seeing what was coming through. And as I did so, I looked down and I found an item that I had been missing for, I actually don't know how long, but I'll show it to you here. It's this little L charm, and this is relevant because it came from a protective necklace that I own that I had been given by a friend of mine. It has another charm on it, but that particular charm, which is for my name, which is Liz. Hi, I don't know if I've said that before, but hi, I'm Liz. But that particular charm had been lost for a while. And when I found the charm, as I was sitting here with the cards, just basically it was at my feet, I had the phrase go through my head, which was getting your name back, which was very interesting. And so as I continued to sit with the cards, the message that seemed to be coming through was an agreement that has been made outside of time in your name has now been broken. And interestingly enough, I paused my camera a moment ago and accidentally paused it exactly at 2:22. So that might be a relevant message for you. The energy that I was getting from the cards, specifically from the warrior coming out in reverse, the warrior card talks a lot about how the warrior kind of has 2 polarities. On the one hand, it can be a sort of sacred energy if directed correctly. And on the other hand, if you don't really know what you're fighting for, or you're fighting for the wrong thing, it can become incredibly destructive. And with the womb, the vow, and the fault line coming out right on top of each other, it feels as though this agreement, and I say has been made in your name in the sense of someone has, or a group of people have had a certain impression about you, which has been creating the timeline that they have been living through, based on their perception. And this idea of you has been using your name, using your likeness in their minds so that they can perpetuate a specific story about you that is ultimately not true. And that this is something that is causing conflict and destruction now, because with the womb card coming out, it's something that has been kind of growing and almost, the word coming to mind is now festering, for a while now. And with the fault line then, it is sort of cracking up to the surface, if that makes sense. So I pulled some tarot cards to sort of see what this agreement was that was made. And I first got this Page of Swords here, which is my extra confirmation that this is something that has already kind of been cut. And then I got the Page of Coins, 3 of Wands, 9 of Coins, and the Chariot. As always, I love to show off the art. And what I was getting from that as I was sitting with it was that this sort of judgment that has been placed upon you and your motivations and in your name has been sort of this idea about the way that you have handled a specific situation in your life. If you look here, I keep dropping cards. Energy is slippery. If you look here, you see how he's kind of like peering into something. It also says pawn on the side. This guy works in a pawn shop, so you can think of it in the sense of someone judging the value of something, someone trying to judge the value of what they perceive to be your intentions, someone trying to sort of put that on, someone taking what they perceive to be your intentions and kind of reading very deeply into them, trying to figure out what it is that you are truly doing. And as I pulled these other 3 cards, these 3 here, these are all, 3 of Wands, very much about starting something new, entering a new phase of your life, right? Something that's very abundant here, right? 9 of Pentacles fits with that exact same theme. The Chariot, moving forward, right? So what I'm getting here from this is that this is something that was for a time, while this was very active, was sort of preventing you from moving forward into this phase of your life that you had been trying to enter. And that this was something that was not really open to you during that, because this energy was sort of still in the process of cycling itself out. So psychically, within the realm of Kairos, which is mythic time, synchronistic time, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, as this was working itself out, it was creating what I will call psychic conflict. And this psychic conflict was ending up in your field because it was under your name, someone's perception of you. And because of this, it was creating a sort of energetic block that was preventing that forward movement, despite the fact that it had nothing to do with your actual intentions, actions, etc. So I hope that all makes sense. We're going to continue to look into this. I'm going to shuffle those cards back into the deck, and we're going to get a little bit more into what this vow was and what this whole thing is all about. So if you feel so far that this message is resonating with your experience lately, feel free to stick around. If not, feel free to leave. Take everything as it resonates with you, and don't take anything that doesn't. Now, the Kairos card is very interesting here because I feel like in this context, once again, Kairos being mythic / synchronistic time, it refers to, in this sense, this idea of, I think the best way to explain it would be like this. You know when you are talking to someone who you really, really connect with and you feel like time is just kind of like that. Like time is just going and there is no sense of like you don't look at the clock, and when you do finally look at the clock, it's so much more time has passed than you have even registered at any point, because you were in such a strong alignment with that person that instead of feeling time as in the passing of minutes or hours even, you are feeling more of a sense of flow. You're in a flow state, okay? And the way this differs from your sense of everyday, literal physical time is that sense of strong emotional connection and depth that creates that space outside of time. And oftentimes, if we're not always present, we only really experience this sense of coming into flow in little blips, right? We will sometimes experience it, to fix my camera, we will sometimes experience it within these little moments of like heightened emotion, right? So regardless of what that emotion may be, that moment of heightened emotion becomes this like node point in our general timeline of our life that we're living, right? And that node point is something that kind of stands out in comparison to all the rest of our experiences that we've been having, like just one right after the other, after the other, after the other, where it feels more like happening on a schedule. You know, I need to be here at this time, I need to do this at this time, you know. But we have these moments that occur in what feels like a space outside of time. And they happen because of that strong emotional charge. Now, this is relevant to the storyline that we're building here because this agreement that was made in your name about you is something that is relative to someone's experience of Kairos, to someone's experience of those highly charged node points as they have experienced you and your energy. So, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that as people have experienced being around you and or engaging with their idea of you, they have experienced your energy in a very particular way. They've experienced it not as a continuous sense of being present, but more so as these little blips that stick out in their mind as being these major points of, I'm getting conflict actually, these major points of conflict. And based on all these little points, a story has been strung together that does not necessarily encompass the entire whole of your energy, of what you are expressing, of what you are saying, doing, thinking, being, etc. Okay? So that being said, let's get into the tarot. And we're going to see what the cards have to say about this whole thing. Also, if you notice a lot of jump cuts in this video, please bear with me. This is kind of a complicated message to channel through and put into words. Anyway, let's get into the tarot. So, the Spirit, what is... okay, that's one card already. What is this agreement that has been made in the collective's name? What should we know about this agreement? There's a consistent theme so far of the cards being very slippery and falling out of my hands and moving in ways that I don't want them to, so I feel like that's kind of a metaphor for the way this energy has been moving. I also feel guided to say that the new moon in Cancer that passed recently may have been a large turning point for some of you in working through this energy. I'm going to leave that where that is for now. And we're gonna, okay, let's do cards. Okay. So we have the King of Swords in reverse. The Nine of Wands in reverse. And the Wheel of Fortune. So, the King of Swords, especially in this deck, it always gives me this strong vibe of, I mean, the word that comes to mind is narcissism. You don't have to take it that strongly, but it gives me this sense of, I'm an intellectual and I know more about the situation than all of you do, and I know. You know, in a way that is very looking down on other people. And this Nine of Wands is, to me, a very resilient figure. This Nine of Wands is someone who I feel has kind of been through a lot, her and her little dog here. And I'm getting this sense that part of this energy has been this sense of kind of coming from somebody, or once again, a group of people who have sort of looked down on you for a time, have sort of had very negative opinions surrounding what they believe to be your thoughts on a certain matter, who believe that the way they perceive either a certain situation or your actions or something about your personality, they perceive themselves and their perspective to be superior to that, and that there's also this sense of kind of a complete invalidation of, they don't see the work that it took for you to get where you are. And therefore, when they're looking at the situation, they're kind of seeing it at face value, if that makes sense. There isn't any kind of like looking deeper below the surface in terms of really coming to understand why you hold the perspective that you hold, or sort of being more present with your energy in order to understand anything beyond what ends up being triggers for this person or group of people. So they are seeing you kind of only within these trigger moments, which is what I called those node points before, and not really any time outside of that. Like anything below your surface, they're not going into that depth. And with the Wheel of Fortune here, it really feels like this was an energy that kind of kept you going around in circles for a while, and that it almost feels like this was a little bit intentional. Now, you can take that as it resonates. You may be dealing with people who practice magic, and this may have been something more direct. In most cases, I feel for most of you, this is going to be something more like a general energy of gossip, of people having a specific idea about you, possibly of talking about you behind your back. And that this has been done with the intention, perhaps mostly unconsciously, to not allow you to move forward through this situation and to kind of open your life up into greener pastures, because of this idea that you are not worthy of them. This idea that you are unable to handle the responsibility of these beautiful new things that you are kind of aiming to bring into your life already. And that's simply not true. And I feel that this may, in part, be a reflection of possibly, for whoever I'm speaking to, this may be in part a reflection of certain beliefs that you may have about yourself. There may be a part of you that also believes that you don't deserve to have the beautiful things that you were trying to call into your life. And while I don't believe that that is what is causing this, it may be a part of why there was so much conflict here in the energy with this warrior that came out in reverse. And it may have been a part of that big vibe of psychic interference that was happening, that weight, because that was you working through that internal perception of yourself, that sort of negative limiting belief about yourself that no, I don't deserve to step into this phase of my life. I'm not competent, I'm not responsible enough, I can't, I'm not smart enough, I don't have good enough judgment, you know. My gut feelings can't be trusted. I shouldn't listen to myself or take the time I need to figure out what I need to figure out, you know. That is a big part of the working through, okay? Not why it happened, but a big part of why it took so long and why it felt like going around in circles for a while. Okay? Let's get some more cards about this. Okay. A lot of cards coming out in reverse. That's 2 cards. Let me get one more. This one was already just sitting there. That's our Ace of Swords. And then 7 of Swords. And the Page of Potions, which came out in reverse. The Page of Potions here, if you look, you can see she's kind of riding through a sort of some kind of I don't know what the word would be. She's riding through somewhere, and as she's riding through, she has this potion vial, and she's just sort of letting it fly as she goes. So as she's moving through the space, her emotions are just sort of spilling as she goes, you know, without really any conscious consideration, I would say, for the cause and effect that this will bring, right? And the cause and effect that we see here is in fact this Seven of Swords. This and this really brings new life to me saying gut instinct, okay? Because this is what happens when you are at war with your own gut instinct. It feels like a monster trying to crawl out of you instead of it being recognized as a part of your intuition. Because a lot of what is going on with that Kairos energy, that mythic time, that synchronistic space, is part of your, I want to say part of your intuition, is you being able to sense into that sort of psychic reality of things, where things are not linear, where things are not so much physically connected, where you can feel the energy that's being sent towards you, that's being said in your name, with you in mind, and that while it doesn't have to directly affect you, it can sort of infect the fears that you already have about yourself, and it can sort of catalyze those. And I feel that with this Ace of Swords here, that is a big part of what happened. That it sort of pierced through that sort of layer of internal armor because there was already a fear that was there. And that made a pretty big impact on the collective that I'm speaking to here. Can we get any more information, Spirit, on the motivation behind this? That's one card. It's a 3 of coins, and not in reverse. It's right side up. That's a 6 of coins, and this one's coming out of the deck. 2 of wands. This came out briefly earlier when I cut the deck for something. And when it came out before, it had kind of the same energy that I'm reading off of it now, which is this sense of like, so you probably can't read it, but sorry, I keep messing with my hair. It says here, always watching. It says that down here. I'm wrong. But it does say it on the card. And it's this person kind of looking through a window out at a city. And it gives me this sense of being excluded from a group. And that there has been some sort of intention to exclude you from a specific group of people because of this incorrect perception about you, to sort of keep you in this state of always looking out through the window but never really being able to like get through and get out there. And I will say that this is a very particular and very insidious type of energy, because while it can be perpetuated by people, this is very much something that you will in general experience coming into your reality as you try to break through into sort of like a higher layer of perception, if that makes sense. Breaking through old fears and beliefs to get to a newer stage of your life. This is going to be a big thing that you're dealing with, is this general energy of some sort is going to oftentimes arise in your reality that feels like it's trying really hard to keep you from getting out from behind that window and getting all of it and all of you out into the real world. It really doesn't want you to get out there because it's your own fears. That's what it is. It's what it does, right? It did come out in reverse. I'm not crazy. And that is, it's actually the ace and not the 3. Okay. So, right off the bat, looking at this card, it feels like a bargaining chip. That's the immediate vibe that I get off of it. Feels like a bargaining chip. Here's our 6 of coins here. And this feels like that same energy of giving this information, this perspective, this agreement, as we've called it before, that has been made out of these specific trigger points of heightened emotion, which is a reaction to your energy, not the truth of it, but these points of reactivity that are strung together to form a story, right? This story has been sort of being given to potentially other people within a group to uphold it. Because the point of upholding it is that it creates a stronger barrier to protect you from getting through that window, right? Bargaining chip. Why does this energy not want the collective to be able to break through exactly? What are they trying to prevent collective from accessing? Take this card and this card. I'm gonna leave it there for now. A lot of reversals. I didn't even know that many cards in this deck were currently reversed. We have the Three of Coins. I guess I spoke of it, and here it is. And the Four of Potions, which came out in reverse. The Three of Coins, to me, especially this one, always makes me think of planning. If you look here, right here, I'm not exactly sure how to explain the shape. It reminds me of the Hierophant card, right? That's what it's reminding me of, sort of that shape there and the shape of the window, that sort of like stained glass type window there. Reminds me of the Hierophant card. And this Four of Cups here, this really feels like, okay, I'm going to pull one more card before I say what I'm about to say for confirmation. Okay. So one card fell out and the High Priestess flipped over. We're going to keep that in mind. The other card that fell out was, surprise, another reversal. Ace of Wands. Okay. So this is an interesting situation, right? Because, yeah, Moon on the bottom of the deck. What I'm getting from this, especially from having seen the High Priestess come out, this is a beautiful card. This energy is not something that, yes, it is very likely coming from, I'm sensing a group of people, I'm definitely sensing more than one, but its origin point is not really the people themselves. Its origin point is more directly related to you ascending through certain circumstances in your life to reach that higher point, like we've already talked about. And all of those energies that want to prevent you, that are quite literally plotting against you, okay? And once again, this is part of your own shadow, right? They are trying very hard to get you to not see what is on the other side of them, okay? They want you to be in this energy here, where all you can see is what's directly in front of you, all of that conflict, right? And when Spirit, when the universe is kind of like, hey, knock, 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 like, there are better things for you on the other side of this, on the other side of all of this fear, on the other side of all of this confusion. This energy doesn't want you to see that, okay, because it is made up of your fears, of your past limiting beliefs. And what it wants to happen is for you to recede all the way back into the same energies that you've been in, right? It wants you to keep those fear loops operating, to keep those same structures operating, right? Because if you don't, if you move past them and you say, actually, those things aren't true about me. Maybe at a certain point in my life, parts of those things were true. Maybe I had things that I was working through at various points, and it caused me to have certain fears, perhaps, whatever it is for you, you know? But those things aren't true about me now, because I've worked through them. I've moved past them. And being in this place in my life where I'm saying, I want to move forward, right? Where I'm trying to bring those beautiful new things into my life, right? This is proof that that's not my current energy. What this is old fears coming all the way back up, trying to convince me that that's still who I am, And how is this happening? Through people, as it often does. Because it's kind of the easiest way for it to happen. Through people, through psychic interference within your own mind, right? It is specifically trying to get you to not enter your sort of like higher observer mind here and really process who you would be if you completely gave up on all these limiting fears that were previously holding you back. Because those energies, those fear-related energies, and oftentimes the people who are really strongly carrying them and who are still very much living within those perceptions, they don't want you to rise out of that, because then you wouldn't be in alignment with their idea of you anymore. You would break the agreement. It would get your name back. Let's get an oracle card, another one from the archetypes deck, and see where else this takes us. What else should we know about this spirit? So again, the cards are slippery. It's this one. The one. Yeah, okay. Let's get one more, and yeah, Aletheia. Truth. Both completely black and white cards. So the one here is, I feel like, our big confirmation that this is something that kind of originates from a little bit of a more complex level than just being like, oh, some people are throwing some energy your way. Some people have some negative impressions of you. This is a larger thing. This is more relevant to your growth as a person, to the work that you are doing on yourself, to what you are working on manifesting into your life on a large scale, right? To the way that your perception grows and expands, and the way this raises your vibration as you continue to make progress in this avenue. Aletheia is truth being revealed. Actual truth in terms of not just someone's perception of the truth, but universal truth. Sorry about that, my stomach is growling. The perception of universal truth, as in how energy is actually flowing, right? What more should we know about this spirit? The cave. Okay. The cave and this one. The cave and the river. What I'm getting from this, and I will point out here that the river card, when you hold it upside down, you can see that there's a reflection of a horse, which brings me back to the idea of the chariot. We pulled the chariot earlier in the beginning. I just saw 2 and 2, so might be a synchronicity for you. The 2s are also very relevant to right place, right time, which takes us back to Kairos. Regardless, with the cave and the river, it brings me to this idea of really stewing on something for a while. This womb energy again. Something was stewing for a while, both within the people sending you this energy, right? And when I say sending, it does not have to be direct and conscious. I mean, generally speaking, having this energy towards you very strongly. A lot of strong emotions behind this perception of you and who you are, right? On these people's end, this perception was stewing for a while. And on your end, whoever it is that I'm speaking to here, you were stewing through your own internal perceptions of yourself. Working through, what do I actually believe is true about me? And what am I ready to let go of? What am I no longer allowing to hold power over me? And what is it that others think of me that is something that I'm afraid of, that I'm afraid that I am, that deep down I know in my truth that I'm not, right? This river has a lot to do with, is that upside down? No. This river has a lot to do with emotions, working through the heavy emotions that these thoughts and thought forms will bring up in us, right? I'm trying to see what more there is to this message because it almost feels like we've already come full circle. I'm going to pull a couple more tarot cards and we're going to see where this takes us. I feel like this message has sort of like circled around very quickly and very abruptly, so it was interesting. It was very slippery at first and then it started to make sense very fast. I'm going to pull this card, Knight of Coins. And he's looking at his watch here, which is telling me time's up. Time's up. The cord is cut. Energetically speaking. Is that the Chariot down there that I see? No, it's Justice. Okay. Nine of Swords. Justice. Oh, and would you look at this? See the shape behind her head? It's Kairos. Okay. So, this is you coming in. This is also divine justice, okay? So the universe bringing that karmic cycle to a close. And in doing so, you may also be experiencing some crown upgrades at this point in time. And or right around that new moon in Cancer that we had, which I mentioned before. But this justice is writing the timelines that were being created in your name, okay? So the ideas that were being upheld by the person or group of people that were creating what is essentially false timelines of your behavior and of your character and identity, we once again have a sword coming in to show us that those are being cut, that they're being righted, that they're being leveled back out to fit and align with your actual truth and identity, which is the Empress. This card on the bottom here. And the Empress is, I mean, you're all here, you all know what the Empress is. The Empress is someone who defines her reality for herself because she understands the power of creation. And I think something that it's important to note that the Empress also understands is that everybody has an ego and that this is part of being a human being. But the ability to work with this and through the illusions that it creates and to create through cycles of life, death, and rebirth is crucial to knowing yourself and to knowing when energies are distorted perceptions of your ego, of your personality, that are coming out of someone else's wounding, and when they are actually things that you need to work on, or things that you need to let die from your life, from your perception, from your idea of yourself even, in order to feel healthier and to be more aligned with your own truth. That's the wisdom of the Empress. I'm going to see if there's any more cards that Spirit wants to throw out at me. And other than that, I think we're done here. I think that's the message. Anything else, Spirit? Thinking like one card. That's a lot of cards. I saw the Chariot in there. Do we have a card? Is that... Oh, we have a card that's flipped over. This deck is playing games with me today. Death. Death of the old timeline. Death of the agreement made in your name. You are getting your name back. And this one fell face up on the floor. 6 of Potions. The way that people have been spreading information about you is being revealed, and all of that energy is moving back to its source. It does not belong to you. It did not belong to you in the first place. And that truth is going to be seen now. And I think that that's where we're going to leave the message. I think that's I think that's the message. So, if you would like to connect with me in the future, feel free to like, subscribe for more, and to also follow me on Instagram, which is also at Silly Tarot. If you would like to get a personal reading, you can DM me on there. I also have at least one in-person event coming up that I will be talking about over on Instagram there. So if you are interested in that, if you are local to me, and that's something that you would like to do, to come see me at an event and get a reading there, you are more than welcome. Go check out my Instagram. You can find the information there. And until then, I hope you all have a great day, have a great week, and I'll see you all when I'm back.